Hi, I'm Michael Azarad, Editor-in-Chief of the Talkhouse, and welcome to the Talkhouse Music Podcast. There's a whole bunch of ways to be an outsider in the world of rock and pop. One of them is to be of South Asian descent. There's M.I.A., whose family is from Sri Lanka, Norah Jones, whose father was from India, Tony Kanal from No Doubt, also of Indian heritage, and then, after that, not so much. The acclaimed new singer-songwriter Bhi Bhiman grew up in the U.S., but his parents came from Sri Lanka, the island nation off the southern coast of India. And when he was starting out as a musician, he looked up to Soundgarden lead guitarist Kim Thayil, whose family comes from India. Like any sensible person, Bhi became a Soundgarden fan. And then, 3 years ago, Kim became a Bhi Bhiman fan, when they both appeared on the same episode of the BBC TV show Later with Jules Holland. Bhi is a really personable fellow, and that comes through in the music on his new album, Rhythm and Reason, which brings an insightful, regular guy perspective on being something of an outsider. And Kim is not only one of the coolest people in rock, he's also one of the smartest. So we thought we'd put these two together, and have them talk about being not just South Asian Americans in rock music, but Americans in rock music, and tell some stories about their lives in music and just their lives. Here goes.
Hey, this is Bhi Bhiman and Kim Thayil. We're, I'm saying that right? Thayil?
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't. Always seen it printed, never seen it said.
Well, you pronounce it correctly.
Yeah. This is Bhi Bhiman and Kim Thayil. We're doing the Talkhouse at KEXP here in Seattle. So what the hell were we talking about?
Oh, I think we were
talking about the Cubbies.
Baseball, the Cubs, and...
Talking baseball, DiMaggio, Ruth, and Gehrig. This might not be musicians chatting with musicians. Just talking about baseball might not turn out so hot.
It's part of it's part of what the musician conversation will end up being, which is the biography, a unique biographies, both the ethnic immigrant story and the growing up American story.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for the segue there, because I was going to ask you something. I mean, we are very American, I would say. We grew up very American lives, but our parents are immigrants,
Right.
South Asian immigrants.
Yes.
And for me, that played a specific role, but not necessarily a musical role in terms of upbringing and influences.
Americanization doesn't play...
No, my parents'
right.
ethnicity doesn't necessarily play. I was left to my own devices,
Right.
listening to classic rock and whatnot. But I wanted to ask...
Same thing.
Yeah. I know your mom was a music teacher.
Yeah, so
musician.
it was going to be Western...
She was into
music.
Western music.
Not country Western, not genre, but, as opposed to the Indian scale, which is what...
White music.
Yeah. Well, she studied at the Royal Academy London,
Oh, wow.
the Bombay School, piano. She graduated when she was 18. And then she ended up being an English teacher and a school teacher in a junior high. But starting out, she taught music at various junior highs in our district, same district that I attended. But ultimately was tenured as an English teacher. So there you go. That should suggest some Anglophilia right there. The fact that she taught English and did the whole British music, classically trained thing.
Yeah.
So that was her orientation. But she had certainly a cultural sentiments toward Indian music. And
Yeah.
I think when we had guests over, she put on some Ravi Shankar and light some incense, My dad just likes church music, easy listening, because he was in choir.
Okay.
And
Was he a Christian?
yeah, both my folks were not hardcore. I mean, growing up they were,
Right.
but my dad's is oriented towards science. He's an engineer, so they're very very much independent of that. It's strange. My grandmother speaks 10 languages. My dad speaks
Right.
English. And my grandmother speaks, Marathi, Urdu, Hindi.
Right. You had to.
Yeah,
To live in your neighborhood or something, That's how my grandfather was.
But some of his siblings speak various Indian languages, but my dad doesn't.
Oh, is he the young one?
No,
Oh.
he's the Second eldest.
Huh.
Well, third eldest.
So it's weird to be the interviewer a little bit here. I'm usually the interviewee.
No, I'm going to interview you.
Yeah, you will. We'll get there. We'll flip it. But right now I'm doing this. So let me just do it, Kim. So did you play piano? Your mom taught you some piano?
No, we didn't have a piano in the house because we didn't, I'm not entirely clear about that, but the initial thing that's occurring to me is they're living on a student budget, and they had a kid, and
Right.
they're on a student visa and working, and
Piano wasn't the first thing on
and
the
it's
list.
also difficult to haul around and to as a piece of furniture, it occupies a lot of space in a basement apartment.
Right.
They didn't really have the room for it or the ability to travel with it,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually, when we did have some sense of permanence, my dad was not oriented towards these kind of expenses, which is unfortunate because my mother would have loved to have a piano, and my dad, even though he was in choir as a kid, just liked easy listening radio. It was just awful. He had a really awful
Like
taste.
Lawrence Welk? What are you talking about?
Yeah, Lawrence Welk, yes, Mitch Miller. I mean, even at his young age, when I was like 5 or 6 or 7, I would whine and tear up when they put the TV on Lawrence Welk or Mitch Miller. I to my core couldn't stand the music. I would writhe around on the carpet going, when is it over? When is it over? I mean, I'd watch Wild Kingdom. I could watch cartoons. I could watch Hollywood Palace. I could watch Ed Sullivan, but no, make this stop.
You wanted to burn his pewter blue jacket.
I had a pretty strong identity of what I liked at a young age, and it was not formed socially or parentally. I'd like to believe it's innate, but somehow I would hear Day Tripper on the radio, and I go crazy. Oh my God, that's the coolest thing in the world. And then I'd hear Lawrence Welk. Can we turn it off? Stop it.
Is it because you're a riffologist in the making? Is that Day Tripper is a heavy riff? Must have.
Oh yeah, I love the riff. That's exactly the same thing with like all the other Beatles things, like Paperback Writer and Taxman. I didn't know how to play, and it's certainly not the music my parents listened to in their homes.
Right.
My neighbors mostly listened to Jackson 5, Sly and the Family Stone,
Yeah.
a lot of R&B and soul, and Motown. We were in Chicago. I guess on the radio you'd hear ridiculous pop. In the 60s
Turtles.
and 70s, yes, I loved Happy Together. But they also played in those days. They played a lot of country music was in top 40.
Okay.
So you'd get country, you'd get some pop rock, you'd get some soul and R&B. In Chicago, you had a lot of soul and Motown.
Right.
I have to show a little bit of regard for my dad's taste because he did listen to Johnny Cash and some country stuff.
Oh, cool.
So he listened to some pop things. But not much. He thought the Beatles were all noise and couldn't understand why I'd jump up and down in the car when it came on the radio. He'd go to turn the station like, "Oh, wow." And I don't know where I learned it from because it wasn't the kids, it wasn't my family. I'm guessing it's just a natural response.
Yeah, no. Yeah. You had a response that a lot of people had.
Do you remember walking into guitar stores or even because I'm older, department stores used to have music sections where you could walk in there and they have like electric keyboards, electric guitars, and they looked so cool because they were thinner. They were there was a solidity to them, and you just stare at the bright colors. And I just daydream, oh, that'd be cool. I wish I knew how to play that. You'd see a band on TV, and you think, wow, how did they do that? I bet I could do that someday. I don't know, maybe I can't. But it was just like a wish thing. You just walk in, you'd stare at a guitar,
Right.
stare at some records. Or you go to the sports section, look at an aluminum bat. Someday I'm going to get an aluminum bat.
Totally.
I can hit the ball farther. So, did you have that kind of experience, or were
With my guitar?
or were department stores a little bit different by then?
Well, my first guitar was the Series 10, and you should never have heard of it because it was
acoustic?
terrible. No, it was an electric. It was so bad. It was like the frets were all cut.
Well, where'd you
sharp.
get it?
Some store that was all right, but I didn't, you don't know what the hell you're doing when you first pick up a guitar.
Was it a music store?
Oh yeah, it was a music store. They had some cheap instruments. I'm sure they had some like nice Fenders and Epiphones, Gibsons and whatnot. But out of my budget for a fledgling, little kid, just trying it out.
How
But
old were you?
I started playing when I was like 7. I probably got an electric when I was like 9 or 10.
So wait a minute. Your parents were that cavalier toward how their child was raising himself that they let him just stare at electric guitars? I think my dad would kind of steer me away from that, and my mom would like turn me back around. I was like, "No, let him look." I'm like,
Probably a little bit of both. But the
"Did you have a scientist or doctor?"
my
in your
mom is
family?
an ER pediatrician. She's a gangster. She sees some
Yeah.
serious shit.
So why wouldn't she?
It was an extracurricular thing. It wasn't like it was just like violin or piano, but I didn't like violin or piano. I was into doing the duck walk like Chuck Berry, and that's all I wanted to do. And,
There was no hesitation with your parents to prevent,
Plenty.
the youthful Americanization,
plenty, but they're very embracing of American culture,
Yeah.
and so they're not afraid of it or something.
No.
Some people might be wary of their kids becoming too Western.
And my folks were somewhat Western,
Yeah.
their only language is English.
Yeah.
Um,
And my
and
my
the
parents were
music
English,
listened
yeah.
to is Western.
Yeah, my parents were taught English growing up, so they knew it, and the U.S. had an army base near there, and they would pipe in. They had a radio station.
Colombo?
That's the capital. My parents are from a town called Jaffna. It's a very northern
Is
tip.
U.S. Army base there?
Yeah, so
Wow.
back in the day, British too. I mean, and so they would get American music. Robin Williams was the DJ. No, I'm just kidding.
I would have thought it would be British, but I guess the British were pretty much kicked out in my parents' day. So I guess the sun never sets on the U.S. empire, huh?
Yeah. They just keep chasing it.
And what did your dad do?
My dad was a civil engineer.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sons of engineers.
Yeah, they were smart people,
Yes.
which made it all too disappointing that I went in the path that I did.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question earlier. It's
They're
like,
not disappointed. I'm just kidding.
oh my God, my son's hair's long and he's staring at electric guitars. What's going to happen to him?
It's because of you, Kim.
He's
I
gonna be
learned it because of watching you.
He's going to be doing drugs and burglaries.
Again, I learned it from watching you. No, seriously, you were a huge influence on me. Seeing an Indian American man, fully grown man playing rock and roll.
What is our age difference?
I'm 82, born in 82.
I was born in 60. Okay.
Bit of an age
that's
difference.
a bigger difference than I would have guessed for
Yeah.
some reason.
I call you Uncle Kim.
Okay.
Chris told me to call you Uncle Kim.
Yeah, and you're permitted.
Um,
I am somewhat avuncular.
yeah.
Let's go see a game. Let's hang out. Want a beer? I bet it's your first.
I'm 12.
Don't tell your mom. It's just be our secret. It'll be okay with us, right? You're big enough. You can have a beer.
But yeah, no, you were. I mean, I'm not trying to lay it on too thick here. That's not my style.
That's
But just
cool.
for this interview, it was a big deal. And when we met at Jules Holland in England, I was like, you guys were the headliners. I was like the tack on at the end. And when I found out that you guys were playing, I shit my pants basically. And then when I realized how you play that show, and everybody has to watch everybody, and you guys watched me, I watched you. I was like, I got to go say hi. I got to go say, like, you guys are very important to me. When Super Unknown came out, that kept me playing and singing. That actually coincided with me injuring my hip really bad, swinging a baseball bat.
Injured your hip swinging a
So
bat.
I broke a chipped bone in my hip bone, swinging through a pitch, and it was just a freak accident.
How
It was
did that
strike
happen?
one. It was strike one. My coach was such an asshole that he made me sit there and because he's such a competitive dude, it was like an important tournament. I had to sit there and get struck out so that he didn't burn like an extra player.
So how did you hit your hip with the bat, or
No. I just swung and it like a ligament popped it out. It was weird.
Wow.
It was totally weird.
Yeah.
And I was like bedridden for quite some time. And Super Unknown came out, and for like 2 years, that's like all I listened to.
I know
Chris's vocals, your guitar work was a big deal for me.
thank you, but I think you'd mentioned that before, and I think we may have had a subsequent conversation about guitarists I know growing up that were hot shots at a young age, and so many of them had a similar biographical anecdote.
Oh yeah.
They were injured, laid up in traction,
Mm.
They get their guitar, or their sibling gives them a guitar as a way to pass the time, and they just sit there figuring out Starship Trooper by Yes or some Santana songs, and then they end up being crazy. I mean, there's a guitarist in Chris's in his solo touring band, a guy named Pete, I believe his name is.
I never met him.
Yeah, he's a similar thing. I think it was some accident. He was laid up in hospital in bed, just played guitar to pass the time, and just became. My story is similar. In my injury was social. I lacked a healthy friend base
Okay.
to keep me occupied. So fortunately, I passed the time
I
reading
had a little
and
bit of
playing
that
guitar.
too, yeah. Guitar, you're my only friend.
Yes, and that's what it was. Just hours and hours of playing guitar, and then lots of reading. So about that Jules Holland thing, we got to watch each other's rehearsals.
Yeah.
And we watched your rehearsal. And then Chris comes over to me and says, "Hey, that dude, what guy?" He goes, "That B guy who just played guitar." Yeah. He goes, "He's really cool." And I go, "Oh yeah, it's pretty cool. It's folk music and stuff." He goes, "No, I mean the way you play, the way he watch. He's a really good guitar player. I was listening to his voice, which it's weird because I always focus on guitar because of the genre. I was like, oh, I'm listening to you sing. I didn't go to the guitar. If you were like a jazz guy or a rock guy, I'd go there." And he points out the guitar. So I start watching, and Chris is really excited, thinks that you have this great, strong right hand. And as I watch, I realize your right hand's like Chris.
Is it?
Yes. And I was watching. One reason is I used to believe, because Chris was our drummer originally,
Right.
and when he plays, he pivots off of his elbow. Like lead guitarists pivot from their wrist. And I would notice that there are many.
He certainly does. Yeah.
That there are these drummer guys that move from their elbows.
Yeah.
And bass players move from their shoulders. So I thought it was a drummer thing. And gradually I started learning it might be a rhythm guitarist singer thing, because they're counting and they're going like this, and they have a regular groove. And it helps them meter singing. They know where they are, where the melody is meandering through the rhythm and the song. And what confused the matter more is there's so many drummers come singer, rhythm guitarists. Chris was one of them, but then you have Dave Grohl, you have Frank Zappa, Father John Misty, Phil Collins.
Nice reference there.
Yeah. Well, on and on. These guys who start off with drummers end up being lead singers. There's so many of them. It's like they're the catcher on the baseball field. They know
right. Their view, they see everything, and
they'll move the second baseman over to the right or to the left. They're like the
That's
director and the field general.
Yeah.
And drummers have a sense of what's going on with the melody, and Chris certainly,
because they're not playing one.
But Chris used that to his advantage. Obviously, well, he was singing and drumming to eventually go up front to become our. We had to choose: do we want to get a drummer or do we want to get a singer to replace Chris?
Right. Is that you got Matt right away, or you had somebody else?
We had Scott Sundquist was our drummer, and it was a guy that Chris worked with, punk rock guy, loved the Dead Kennedys. Okay, you can be our drummer, and Chris will sing. You have that elbow thing. I'm thinking it's because you're a singer, and as I listened to the guitar as Chris had directed me to, I noticed that there's something rhythmic going on there. You're really tight, and there are rhythmic things going on that I would then reference, like Simon and Garfunkel songs, because that's the rhythmic sophistication within the folk genre that I can easily and always reference. And I knew immediately why Chris took to it. It's the right hand, which reminded me of him, and has a rhythmic sensibility as a drummer. Then you came over and introduced yourself as being a huge fan, and as being
that was amazing,
influenced by me. And I'm thinking, dude, your right arm is like Chris. Maybe your left hand is like me, but your right arm is like Chris.
Well, I mean, it was a big deal. Your band was a big deal for me in terms of being having something to aspire to. Sometimes when you're a kid and you're playing guitar, you can easily just become bored with it, or you feel like you suck, and then
Well,
you're
if you have a
not
shitty
getting
guitar,
better.
both those things
If you have
will
a
happen.
Series 10
You'll be discouraged.
fire engine red guitar, yeah.
Let's make that note for any parents out there, because nowadays, pop star is certainly a career option for people, parents of our age. It wasn't when we were growing up. Don't get them a shitty guitar like what B and I had. It's you'll get discouraged. The kid can't make the chord. It hurts.
Yeah.
They start the wiry strings cut in your fingers, and they eventually put it down. They're not having any reward or success. Or
You
they're
don't
not
like
progressing.
natural selection? You're not in favor of it?
I had no other choice. I had to keep playing the shitty guitar because there wasn't anything else to do.
And what were you into when you were growing up? What kept you playing? Is that a long answer question?
I think I referenced earlier being a little bit isolated. It was something I'd do on my own.
Like
reading,
R&B
reading,
and
play
stuff?
guitar.
Is that stuff you were into, or
It was really
Beatles
everything. Like I
stuff?
said, I'd hear some folk neighborhood. A lot of Jackson 5 and Sly and Family Stone, Temptations, and then Beatles. I really gravitated toward cool guitar riffs.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the weird thing: I didn't know that was guitar. For a long time, I thought all those cool riffs were on the keyboard. Like if you watch the Brady Bunch or the Partridge Family, there's this electric keyboard.
Right.
I thought electric keyboard. And my mom plays piano. That's where all those cool sounds. I hear one of the early singles I bought when I was 10 was "Roundabout" by Yes, or maybe I was 11. And there's this cool part. It's a guitar part, but the song is so dominated by, I guess, Rick Wakeman's keyboard that I thought even the guitar parts were keyboard parts. So I wanted to play electric piano or something.
Yeah. So you're
I would
just trying
play air electric piano Fortunately, I had a lot of baseball bats and a few tennis rackets at home, so it facilitated playing air guitar.
You play tennis?
We had tennis rackets. My parents would occasionally play tennis, so we had a parking lot. So
Hit against the wall.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would play catch against the wall, or I'd hit the tennis racket against the wall. I was not as accurate with the tennis racket and a tennis ball.
Yeah.
So I had to stop because there are windows proximal to the wall. Any
Right.
wall.
Yeah, you're gonna break a window or two if you're playing ball.
We go out in the parking lot and just kind of, the way we play tennis was try to see how far we could hit it.
Like a baseball.
Yes, exactly.
Your home run is like.
Yeah.
There goes the neighborhood. There goes the neighborhood. There goes the neighborhood. There you go now. Tell me what you gonna do when the bottom falls for you. Tell me what you gonna do for my baby. And the White House turns to gray, and the black won't wash away. Tell me what you gonna do.
When you go out here in Seattle, how bad do you get bugged?
It depends where I'm going, and you never really know.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to ask you a similar question.
How does it feel to not get noticed ever?
People, if people don't recognize me, they might stare at the brown bearded guy, with some
The
suspicion.
zigzag man.
That's funny. Ben and his buddies, Ben and some of his friends of Nirvana, back in the day when we played our first few shows, they'd come and check us out. And after the show, Ben and I think Chad was the original drummer for Nirvana, maybe Chris and some of the guys from Melvin's. Ben came and goes, "We took a vote and decided that Soundgarden's our favorite Seattle band." And that was like sometime in our third or fourth gig, and their friends were like, "Yeah." And we took another vote and decided you're the zigzag man. So what do you mean zigzag man? I go, "Oh, the rolling papers." Well, people would stare at me and I think, they probably saw me on TV doing Almost Live or maybe MTV or some comedy routine, and that's what often happened.
Yeah.
People knew I played in a band, but they didn't know which band, and the common names were Pearl Jam and Nirvana, so they would immediately think, "Well, don't you play in Nirvana or Pearl Jam?" I go, "No." And eventually, in the course of the conversation, while I'm trying to buy toilet paper or cat food, would end up, standing in the aisle at some grocery store with them, acknowledging that they know me from this local
Right.
TV show, but they knew I was in a rock band, but they didn't know which one. So eventually, it came to be, especially now. A lot of our fans have grown up; they're older. You run it. It's strange. You run into someone who's gray haired and they're my age or a little bit older, and they recognize me. I don't expect that. I expect that to come from some
kids,
younger person who dressed all kind of rock, and I realize, oh, I guess I aged, and people in my age group age as well, but they're not still rock guys. They're not wearing T-shirts and jeans. They wear suit jackets and ties. They have kids and a mortgage, and so they've grown up. And I'm still, 19 or something. So,
But people are pretty polite here. Like at a restaurant, people will notice you. Do you get it pretty bad, or is it all right?
It will affect my choices. I won't go to a place that's going to be rock heavy with a friend to go hang out because I'm not gonna have time to visit with the people I want to visit, like people who are in town, or with my girlfriend, or with my buddies who I haven't seen in a while. You want to have a few beers and joke around. And if you go to a place where you'll be recognized and you're going to have to be interrupted every now and then and speak with people, and that's fine. Most people are really polite, especially satellites. They're smart and civil.
I imagine they are.
But every once in a while, you get someone who's drunk who doesn't know or care about you, but cares that you're someone that their friends know or something, and they make a big deal about that. So they interrupt you anyways and make a big deal about your celebrity, even though it's not celebrity in general, but they don't care, they don't know, and then they make sure that you understand that they don't care.
I experienced 100 lovely people, and then like 2 shitty people, and I don't remember exactly what the 100 very nice people said. But I remember what the 2 really shitty people did.
That's
say.
right. You don't remember all the times that you had a pleasant sensation from eating your favorite food. You know that you like it, but for some reason you remember that time that you put your hand on the stove, or the time you broke your hip or whatever. Yeah. Yes. Pleasure is less intense in pain and less frequent.
Yeah.
And its duration is not as long as pain, whether it's emotional or physical. But that's a unfortunate axiom, but it's true.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the intensity of the discomfort is memorable. Perhaps it's a epistemological tool for learning.
Dang, I don't even know what that word is. Epistemological. I'll look that up later.
The field or study of knowledge and how we come to learn it, through your senses or reason, or I believe that's definitely. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's why we remember, heartbreak and and
as you can tell,
burned fingers.
Kim is a very philosophical man, spewing knowledge,
but not to the point of pedantry. I hope we can get back to music.
Yeah, or ask me some questions.
Before the mics went on, we were talking a little bit about percussion, and one of the things that stands out in a lot of your work is percussiveness. And we were referring to it. I was referring to it earlier with your right arm pivoting off the elbow when you play guitar. A similar thing to what Chris does, and many singer guitarists, with the exception of Hendrix, who certainly. But it's also in your recording and in your production, the way you arrange things, and it's a strength that it took me a while to understand about Simon and Garfunkel. When I was younger, I'd think about, and it's strange, I love Simon and Garfunkel. I don't know if it's because I have a nostalgic affinity for it as a kid.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's the percussion. Because
really interesting percussion.
Every song is framed differently by the percussion. The percussion seems to define the room you're in. It houses the song, and you seem to understand that in your songwriting, and especially the new album. I've only listened to 4 songs of the new record. There's more strings, by the way. It seems to be a little bit more orchestrated, but the percussion, and there's a song that had like a reggae feel on it. It was
There Goes the Neighborhood, maybe.
Yeah. You listen to that, Up in Arms, Moving to Brussels. But it's a sensibility that I think is ultimately going to take you a long way because it's something that's going to distinguish you from singer guitarists especially in the folk genre, folk pop genre.
I mean, I'm doing a folk presentation, you might say, but what my background is super varied. I like.
Sure.
I love
Police, AC/DC.
Police.
There's two rhythmically distinct bands.
Yeah, I mean, I love heavy. I loved learning riffs growing up. All I did. That's why you were a big deal to me.
We have riffs and weird time signatures.
Yeah, Rage Against the Machine. I just love the
Oh,
riffs.
yes, exactly.
Black Sabbath riffs. I mean, you name it. Anything heavy that was heavy riffs, I was all over. And but at the same time, I loved R&B and funk music like Sly and
Yes.
and you know Wilson Pickett and you know anything with good guitar in it, and I was just all
Sly
about
had great bass too.
Yeah.
Larry Graham. That's
great,
amazing.
of course, Larry Graham. And my last album was very much this Americana thing, where I was playing acoustic guitar all throughout it, and I do that when I play solo. I use the acoustic guitar, but I bring the acoustic guitar was not my first instrument. That was like the electric guitar was my first instrument. So I bring an electric guitar player's sensibilities maybe to an acoustic guitar, and definitely
the
different
flat
style.
picking because
Yeah, I mean, and some alternate tunings. Well, I'd like to ask you a little bit about that in a second, but I arrived at the singer-songwriter world at a very different path. My race and my immigrant background is one thing, but just what I was listening to, I was an electric guitar player for absolutely. I wasn't even a singer. I didn't aspire to be a singer. I just wanted to play guitar as much as I could, get as
you
good.
played rock bands.
Yeah, I played in a
up
band.
singers?
I would describe as Soundgarden meets Sly and the Family Stone.
Wow.
Which
So
it's hard to even.
kind of what Faith No More, Jane's Addiction-y or something.
Maybe, yeah. Not far off for
But
sure.
we did Ohio Players and a Sly and the Family Stone song early in the day. I mean, we
What
recorded
did you
them.
do?
As a matter of fact, on our new
Thank you.
yeah,
did
we did
Thank
no,
You.
we did Thank You, but I didn't play the guitar riff. I played the bass riff because that was the head one. And we slowed it down, and
Oh,
we also did "Fop" by the Ohio Players, and
Oh.
that was our second
oh yeah.
EP. Was a Fop, well, maxi single was "Fop," but our new record, "Echo of Miles," Scatter Tracks Across the Path,
hmm
that's like a subtitle. It's a 3-album set.
Yeah, you sent me that. Yeah,
We did.
you sent me the link to the
Cool.
review. I haven't picked it up. But
We got the originals. We have one album that's all originals, one that's all covers, and one that's oddities like DJ remixes and
okay.
instrumentals. The covers one, yeah, we Sly thank yous on that. It was something we did for a John Peel session back in the late '90s. But yeah, very influential. And so it's something that is when you say Soundgarden and meet Sly and the Family Stone. That's funny because in our early days when Hero was in the band,
You were
especially-
Soundgarden meets Sly and the Family.
Yes. And a lot of that came from Hero because Hero is also a Chicago boy.
Okay.
We both grew up in Chicago, and like I said earlier,
Did you stay
Chicago
in
radio.
touch?
Yeah. So you get a lot of, Ohio Players, Jackson 5, Sign of Family Stone, other Motown stuff. That's the way we grew up. Shy Lights.
Yeah.
And so he would bring that.
Oh, girl.
Yeah, have you seen her? So as a
Have you
bass
seen
player,
her?
I have that single.
Yeah.
So as a bass player, Hero wants to do this.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool. But I'm going to have to. Our version of Thank You, we refer to as Sly and the Family Sabbath. So you're playing guitar. So are you playing all those weird ninth chords and those?
Yeah, I'm all over. I love funk guitar. I James Brown, Ohio Players, Earth, Wind and Fire. That's part of me. I love rock and roll. I love country music. I love ringing phones. So, like, I was talking about how you were influential to me just like a role model, somebody I could look at. One of the few South Asians on the scene of anything, music, TV, anything. I've had myself, just in my short career, other South Asian American artists, even South Asian British people come up to me and talk to me about how
Yes.
I'm helpful to them. I don't know about a role model or whatever, but I'm not gonna blow myself up too big here. But that I'm important to them in a way of just the visual. It's important to see a visual.
Yes, I think it's
So
correct.
have you had people come up to you other than me?
Like the issue
who say
of
that?
yes, but it was strange for me because there's Ravi Shankar, and then
Mhm.
because I was a fan of like the Velvet Underground and the Stooges, I was aware of a guy named Prakash Chan who played with Lou Reed.
Oh, I didn't know him.
Yeah, I think he was a bass player. Prakash Chan, and I wasn't sure. Is this guy Indian or Pakistani? But probably a British guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's all I know about. Was he played on like a
Prakash,
Lou Reed record, and I kind of thought,
You just knew the name on the record, or
yeah. I
did
go,
you?
wow. There's the
Yeah.
picture of him. I go, yeah. I didn't think it was like Devadip, Carlos Santana, or Mahavishnu, John McLaughlin. He was just taking some kind of Indian sounding title. I thought, I think this guy's Indian. I think I saw
Yeah.
the picture, but and I thought I'm not. I remember thinking I might be it. I mean, I might be the.
So that was
In the 80s, I think I'm the only like rock guys like that. And then in the late 80s, we met a band from Florida called Crimson Glory. All white guys, but the drummer was Indian.
oh.
And I'm spacing out. Look, but Crimson Glory, drummer's Indian dude, long hair. They're kind of 80s metalish, which was interesting because it just seemed like white was an easy palette for hairspray and spandex. It just seemed like that would look weird on an Asian person. That's what I thought then. I thought, yeah, I'm a brown guy with a beard. Spandex is probably not likely. Then as I developed a bit of a beard gut, I thought, yeah, I want. But I met him, and then there was a band called Corner Store.
Corner Store. Somebody was just telling me
Corner
about
Box?
them.
Yeah,
the Corner Store, I believe.
the singer was Indian.
Somebody was just telling me about that.
Really bright, smart lyricist. They're a British band. Was it Corner Shop? Corner Shop?
Corner Shop.
Yeah. But they had.
I'll just agree with you with whatever you say next.
Well, I don't know what happened with them, but I remember seeing some videos in 120 minutes, and the guy's Indian. But here, this is cool. A band that was very influential for us. A number of these British sort of angular kind of goth, moody. I shouldn't say gothy. I mean, Bauhaus is a little bit gothy, but this angular kind of
Sludge.
like bands like Wire, Joy Division, Killing Joke, Gang of Four.
Mhm.
Gang of Four is definitely not gothy, but Killing Joke and Bauhaus kind of were. Killing Joke, I believe Jazz Coleman, the singer, people have told me that he's Indian or part Indian, Jazz Coleman. Now, if this goes out there and I'm totally
Wrong.
incorrect, but I've been told that by other people say, hey, Jazz Coleman's Indian.
Yeah.
So friends have told me that. And I didn't know that. And they were a band that was influential to us. He's, British guy. So I guess they're out there. I guess I've never seen it made. I've never seen it become an issue, although you're referred to as Sri Lankan, ethnically Sri Lankan, not a St. Louisite, but ethnically Sri Lankan, which is cool. In the early days, I would get like Guitar Guru. I think one person slamming me called me a Guitar Buddha. I think, but Guitar Guru was something I got early, and
That's ridiculous.
I really thought of our band as having this Asian identity because of Hero and I. And
Well, it did have a Super Unknown kind of solidified a sort of Indian. There's some half.
Yeah, well,
which was
that's a
Ben's,
riff
or
that
is
Ben
that-
wrote.
yeah.
Chris is in our early days. Chris wrote riffs that were sort of Eastern. I wrote riffs that were Eastern.
Yeah.
And Ben brought that in with half. Hero not so much because he was writing stuff on bass. But
And Matt, I mean, I don't know. He probably is interested in classical Indian drumming to some. He's probably aware
I think so.
of it. You know?
Yeah, probably to some degree. So what I was saying is that there were some people who made an issue of it, but often these days it was just kind of ignored by the '90s and stuff. But in the early days, there was an issue. It's like, oh, these guys, they're Asian and the guitarist is Indian, but it wasn't referenced as much. For instance, I would get interviews where people want to know because this is rock world, and this particular rock world had a lot of female bands that were part of our community that we'd play with and stuff.
Right.
So we get interviews like, well, what do you think of this band? Oh, yeah, we love them. And people, and for some reason, around the late 80s and early 90s, sexual identity in rock was really important to a number of labels and bands that were
Right.
starting.
Yeah.
And we're always very supportive of that. There's no reason for us to, being a band of outsiders, there's every reason to understand that kind of identity. But for some reason, people would ask us about the issues relating to other outsiders and rarely ever asking us to acknowledge our position as an outsider. Like you're like, what do you think? What do you think of women in rock? What do you think of gays in rock? What do you think of this black guy having to deal with?
But you had this Asian identity.
Why'd you asking what
Right.
heroes like being a Japanese bass player in this heavy rock band or Indian? And they didn't do that. But
I have the opposite thing.
yeah, which is
It's always there. It's always I'm Sri Lankan American or I'm just Sri Lankan blues music, whatever.
which is weird. I mean,
It's-
occasionally you
At
see
some
Indian
point,
American.
I hope that can fade away. But I mean, I don't know. It just is what it is. But
But it's like, but you're
It's-
American. You're
Yeah.
born here, but they reference the ethnicity. It's weird.
But
Sometimes it's annoying that they do that, but sometimes it's annoying that they neglect it. you know?
yeah, I don't know what to do about that. I mean, it's a talking point, I guess you'd say. But like, if you're talking about like Key and Peele, the comedians, they don't go light-skinned black comedy duo Key and Peele. They they don't label him like that.
Aziz Ansari, he has referenced his Indianness, but he doesn't often do it. He's more likely to reference rap culture and hip hop culture.
Yeah, I think he makes a concerted effort to not do like, oh, I'm gonna do my imitation of my dad right now, and then
Yeah.
because there's like the Russell Peters. I don't know if you know.
Yeah,
Russ-
Russ Peters, Canadian.
he
dude,
very
right?
much
Yeah,
he
yeah,
very much
yeah.
goes for that, and Aziz Ansari, I think, kind of rejects that in some manner. He doesn't want to play that card.
And Asif Manvi will reference
Yeah,
his
he's
Islamic
awesome. Yeah,
deal more than his Indian thing.
he's good. He had
It's
this,
because of where he's at. He's at Daily Show, so I
Yeah.
suppose referencing the.
he's doing some new show.
I heard about
I
that.
forget
Called
what it-
Halal in the Family. That's hilarious. Yeah,
Yeah, he's a smart, funny dude.
everyone at the Daily Show is bright. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Um,
The about you might be because you're a solo artist. As a solo artist, you're writing lyrics, you're singing, so your words matter and are of import to the audience
and where
to
they're
the
coming
reviewer.
from. And
Yeah.
yeah.
As
I mean,
a guitarist, does it matter that I'm Indian? Maybe if you hear Eastern flavor
Yeah.
in some Soundgarden, maybe it matters. But otherwise, that is not my voice, and so perhaps that's why they don't focus on it. But it is annoying to have someone say, "What do you think of these outsiders in rock and roll?" It's like,
Right.
you're talking to one. Why aren't you asking?
And this was early on.
Yeah,
Early on,
I think there were a few conversations where we had very bright, interviewers who would focus on, women in rock, and I thought, we kind of come from the punk rock thing. There's a lot of women punk rock bands. There aren't a whole lot of female metal bands, unless maybe the Runaways or something, or Girls' School. And in that time, there was a lot of, we had Babes in Toyland, Hole, and a lot of cool bands coming up. But I just remember a couple interviews where where the interviewer was very concerned about their identity, and they wanted to they wanted the band to somehow contextualize and affirm their place in rock. And I thought, yeah, well, why don't you ask me my place in rock? I'm actually having to deal with it. I had some dude come up to me after Hero left the band. I had some fan come up to us in Florida. Is all drunk, and they reference Hero with a particular ethnic slur that made me really
Right.
mad.
Three-letter word.
Yeah, they said it.
Or
yeah,
maybe the 4-letter word.
Yeah, I think it was a 3-letter word, but they said it in a way that they said it in a way that, as though it were an understood way of referencing a close friend of mine. And they said, like, I noticed that this guy isn't in the band anymore. This 3-letter word guy isn't in the band. I grabbed him by his collar and pulled him. I go, the whole reason why any of us are here is because of him. And and he's a good friend of mine. I don't think you should talk that way about anyone, let alone him, and let alone to my face.
Yeah.
The guy's like, it's just, those are issues, you know, people. The fact that we might not look good in spandex.
Well, yeah, obviously people don't. Some people are closed-minded and only live in a place where they are exposed to only so much or whatever. And I understand that. I grew up in suburban,
Midwest.
suburban St. Louis, and I grew up that way. And that's a huge reason why I write the way I write, because I don't want more division. There's plenty of division already. What I'm trying to do in my modest way is to heal, that's a hippy dippy way of putting it, but basically somehow bring somebody together. Not that it's going to actually work, and I'm not, acting like my songs are super powerful in that way, but I'm trying to trick people into looking at things the other way, from another angle that they wouldn't have seen before.
Well, I think that's definitely a cool and smart and humorous thing to do. That's fun. It's fun to turn things on its side and get to deliver something in a different package. That's always cool. It's interesting because you have a perspective of an outsider, yet you have an experience that seems to be so.
It's uber inside.
Like we were saying earlier, Cub Scouts, Little League, rock and roll. Jeez, you can't get more American than baseball and rock and roll. Unless, hold on, were you ever into comic books?
A little bit. I like some Batman. I like some Superman. I wasn't huge. There's plenty of names I don't know, But
I went through a pretty good comic book period, Silver Age comics from the late 60s, early 70s. And that's another damn American thing. Baseball, comic books, rock and roll, these are the things I naturally gravitated towards and loved. But you're in you're in a great position to provide that outsider perspective, and you're doing it. But I'm trying to understand if that is something that you, especially when writing and in your social experience, do you regularly have to, through introspection, analyze that perspective, or is there any conflict in?
No, there's never conflict. It's always kind of fun to if I'm delving into that sort of territory, the insider looking from the outside, whatever that means. But you get it. You just said it. You understand.
It's a real advantage.
It is. And I've said this before to some outlets or whatever, but not only are my parents immigrants from Sri Lanka, but we have a pretty big extended family all over the world. Australia, England, Canada, Africa, and in Sri Lanka. And so it was never about my city or state or the country. Like, I love America, but I also love my relatives who live elsewhere, And to me, everybody is equal. Everybody's life is equally valuable. And some people don't seem to think that. And part of what I'm trying to do is trick people into realizing that is true. Well, I think we got it.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I think we
I don't know. Spend the rest of the night talking, and we're going to say, damn, we should have had the mics on for that. Something's going to come up over a few beers, and we'll...
I'll record on my iPhone or something.
I heard that those guys went out for beers afterwards and talked well into the night. Unfortunately, that wasn't recorded. Maybe we'll try that with them next time. Drinks are on us, fellas. The Talkhouse would like to thank our friends at KEXP in the beautiful city of Seattle for hosting and recording Bee and Kim's conversation. Kurt Riley, Jackson Long, and Will Myers, you rule. You know who else rules? Talkhouse Music Podcast engineer and producer Elia Einhorn. I'm Talkhouse Editor-in-Chief Michael Azarad. And that's it for this edition of the Talkhouse Music Podcast. For more Talkhouse Music Podcasts and lots of great writing by great musicians about new music, please visit thetalkhouse.com/music. And by all means, subscribe on iTunes.